Good afternoon, everyone. We might just give it a couple more minutes to allow any latecomers to log into the system. If you have just joined us, we're just going to give it one more minute to allow people to log into the system. And I think we will start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Suzanne Irwin, Company Secretary for Specialty Metals International Limited, and I take pleasure in welcoming you to the 2020 Annual General Meeting. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and pay our respect to their elders past and present. Given the significant health concern attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to guidelines and restrictions issued by Australian state and federal governments, the company considered that it was appropriate to hold the 2020 AGM as a virtual meeting in a manner that is consistent with the temporary modifications to the Corporations Act 2001 introduced by the Commonwealth Treasurer. As this meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting, I'd like to welcome participants that are joining us via Zoom and ask that you please submit any questions or comments via the Q&A function, which can be found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. When you submit a question or comment, please start by typing which resolution it relates to so that it can be addressed at the appropriate time. Questions which relate to the general business of the company will be collated and addressed after the close of the formal business of the meeting. So if you could please hold those questions until that time. I will read out questions that have been received prior to today's meeting or submitted via the Q&A today, and they will be addressed by the Chair, our CEO, our Chief Commercial Officer or our auditors in attendance as appropriate. I will group questions which are similar in nature, and a representative question will be referred to the Chair for a response. In the event that we are not able to address all questions, we will retain a record of these, and the company will endeavour to provide an appropriate response over future investor briefings. Shareholders in attendance via Zoom that have already submitted a vote by proxy should note that your votes will already be counted towards the poll. You do not need to lodge another vote unless you wish to change your proxy instructions. Shareholders in attendance via Zoom that have not submitted a vote by proxy and wish to vote on the resolutions being put to the meeting today can do so by having followed the instructions provided in Part C of the Notice of Meeting by logging into your Automic account and following the steps outlined. On your screen, there are instructions for how to register and vote using Automic's online voting portal. Can we have that screen, please? On your screen. If there are any questions in relation to the voting process, please raise these via the Q&A function, which can be found at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or you can contact the Automic Registry support directly using the 1300 number as displayed. So if you are having problems logging on to your Automic Registry portal, please call 1300 816 159. I'll give it a moment or so to allow any further latecomers to attend. We should now begin. Please note our standard disclaimer, which which is included in the ASX announcement released prior to this meeting for you to read at your convenience. I now hand over to Oliver Kleinhempel, the Chair of the Board, to start the meeting.
All right, yeah. Good afternoon, dear shareholders and friends of Specialty Metals. My name is Oliver, Chair of the Board of Directors for Specialty Metals International. I would also like to welcome you and all the audience to this 2020 virtual annual general meeting. Suzanne has verified a quorum present virtually, so I confirm that the meeting has been properly constituted and I declare the meeting open for business. In opening the 2020 AGM, please allow me to introduce the board and the leadership team who are in attendance and online with us today. My co-director, Stephen Layton, who might join us on the screen in a minute, as well as Zi Pei Yo, non-executive director, Kevin McNeil, the interim CEO and senior technical advisor to the company, as well as Kim Cavallaro, the Chief Commercial Officer and Executive Director. You've already met Suzanne, our company secretary, and also online we have Jeff Parker and Ben Bester of Nexia Australia, the company's current auditor, available for questions. The agenda for today's meeting will be shown on the screen on the top right. I will provide a short address, followed by a CEO presentation from Kevin and Kim. After that, we will proceed to the formal business to be considered at today's AGM. And finally, there will be an opportunity for all of you to provide questions for each item of the business, with general questions deferred to the end of the meeting. For technical reasons, unfortunately, those questions will be limited to the online Q&A function available on Zoom. Next, Kim. So we'll go through the chairman's address. Further down. The past 12 months has been a period of consolidation for the company, building on the momentum started in 2019 to transition Specialty Metals from a junior exploration company to an emerging tungsten producer. Against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic and these unprecedented times, I think we can confidently say that we have stayed on track. Our leadership team has changed during the year, and they likewise have welcomed a lot of new faces in their effort to expand the operational teams on the ground. Let me take today as an opportunity to thank my colleagues on the board, the leadership team, and every individual employee for their effortless contribution over the last 12 months. Given the travel restrictions, they've coordinated the company's activities from Mount Carbine to Brisbane, Melbourne, all the way to Singapore, and even Johannesburg. They were all over the place. A special thanks to our administration and finance team, where my colleague Natasha Troughton and her team had been an absolute backbone of the company and our guys in charge of operations. Last but not least, I would like to thank you, our shareholders, for your patience, trust, continued support as the team assembled to execute the operational strategies and further strengthen the corporate foundation of the company. The world is facing enormous challenges such as climate change, political and social polarization, rising protectionism, and supply chain uncertainty. Businesses and society are interdependent, and Specialty Metals does not operate in a vacuum. Society and investors now have expectations in relation to companies' environmental, social, and governance performance, and are increasingly holding executives to account. Given these fundamental shifts, the board, with the leadership team, have taken the time to reflect the company's purpose, values, and targeted long-term positioning. We believe everything starts with a purpose, and it's necessary for all of us to align on what we are about so that we can move in the same direction. What you see on the screen here is the purpose statement that we have been developing. I'm gladly reading it out loud. We are and want to be considered a value-oriented resources company, sustainably producing and managing new economy minerals and metals. We maximize the potential of our assets through resource efficiency and invest in our people to deliver materials that are critical for a better tomorrow. It's how we drive value in our operations, approach new opportunities, and at the same time deliver positive societal impact while minimizing our environmental footprint. But let's shortly look at the company positioning in a global context. COVID-19 is a terrible tragedy, given it has or will impact each and every global citizen, as we will still feel the economic and social consequences of it for a long time to come. But COVID-19 has also been a very timely wake-up call for governments and policymakers around the world, as we must secure supply of sustainably produced raw materials for our value chains if we want to leave a positive legacy for future generations. Our focus at Specialty Metals clearly is on critical and new economy minerals. Those are in growing demand to meet the global shifts in energy, industry, and sustainability, ultimately allowing global society to increase living standards and human well-being. Looking at what is going on around the world, while still being in the midst of a pandemic, this subject has never been pressing as today, very much being prioritized on the geopolitical agendas. Tungsten, just a few weeks ago, had been recognized by the European Commission as having the highest economic importance of all materials in the European industrial ecosystem, and is already listed by the US, by India, Japan, and Australia as a critical mineral. Bottom line, our team is committed to enhancing Specialty Metals' existing portfolio and business model to contribute to this globally relevant agenda. This is exciting and challenging at the same time, but I would like to invite everybody to continue to support our team on their journey to realize the potential of this company to add significant value beyond our existing assets and for all stakeholders. I'd like to now hand over to Kim and Kevin to take us through their interesting presentation. Thank you.
Sorry, Kevin, you're on mute.
Put on the video, sorry. Yeah, it's just saying it's a great pleasure to finally be in Australia and sitting up at the tungsten mine and directing traffic from this side of the ocean. And it's been an exciting year for the company. And over the last 12 months, we've done a lot of work on site. We completely refurbished the recovery plant at Mount Carbine. We've proven the XRT sorting technology. We have crushed and tested large-scale samples from the low-grade dump, getting grade and recovery information from a large resource that will take SEI into the future, and to deliver a major quarry contract, which has been a very interesting development in my career, as I've never been involved in quarries before. So the learning curve was sharp and steep, and we were fortunate enough to hire the right people to implement this contract successfully and to continue to deliver on the contract. Long-term growth in the company, as you'll see later in my presentation, is very significant. And I think that's the reason that Kim and I are here, because we also see the long-term potential for specialty. You'll see from the location of the Mount Carbine mine that we do sit in a tungsten cluster, and the area is very prospective. And it is part of our ongoing efforts, and which we'll explain a little bit later in the presentation as well. So Kim, could you, yeah, go to the next slide? Yep, next slide, please. Yeah. So for those who haven't been to Mount Carbine, sorry, back up one. So those who haven't been to Mount Carbine before, you'll see the map, and I am going to focus a lot on Mount Carbine because it is our cash flow generator, and in the near term is where the main focus will be. Number one is office and laboratory facilities. Number two is the retreatment plant. Number three is the quarry operations. Four is the ore sorter strategically located next to the quarry. And number five, that's hidden behind the mountain there that you can't see very well, is a low-grade dump, which I'll show you shortly. So Kim, if we could go to the next slide. Yep. So this is the retreatment plant. We've done quite a bit of work in the last year, and in particular the last 6 months, to get the recoveries and the processing correct, and to ramp it up to a 300,000 ton per annum capacity plant, and to be able to run day in and day out. And it's not without its challenges, having some older equipment, but I think we have retrofitted and replaced and various pieces of equipment, and that we are running quite smoothly in the last bit. So the next slide, Kim. This has been, like I explained earlier, we got a $4 million quarry order, which we'll go into a little bit more detail, but we basically ramped the quarry operations up from a 30 ton an hour operation up to 120 ton an hour operation over a very short period of time from getting the contract. So we'll explain a little bit more detail later on. This is the pilot ore sorter, which we will run as a semi-production plant in the coming year. This is capable of treating 300,000 tons per annum, and that's our intention in the coming year, that we will continually to run this operation, and we are seeing some significant effects coming from the sporadic test samples that we're currently running. When we do get to run them through the retreatment plant, it's quite special. Next. So this is the low-grade waste dump, and really is the next kick in the production of concentrate. You'll see several of these trenches that we've been trenching both in the past and currently retesting. Several pits and different levels of the waste dump. This is a 12 million ton waste dump, and it has been, there's been 80 samples, hand samples taken off of it, 10 test pits, plus we are on our fourth test pit ourselves, and it's 30 meters high, as you can see. So it's a very sizable dump. Next. So what did we do the last year in specific to the retreatment plant? As discussed, we installed several new pieces of equipment that you would have seen early on in the year through the news releases. Commissioning and training, a lot of our personnel were local personnel and never had a lot of mine experience. And I must say we've taken a bit of time to get the crew into shape. But nevertheless, I think we have the right mix of people currently to see. We do run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day on site. And in the last 6 months, like I said, in particular, we've been refining the process, finding the right equipment to treat the material and to expand the production, to get it steady state in particular. And lately in the last month or so, we're starting to test some of the material, in particular the screen material coming off the low-grade waste dump. Once it goes through the ore sorter, there's fine material that comes off, and we've been passing that, and that is very rich material, which is a very pleasant surprise for us. that it has naturally upgraded through the process. So going forward, as I alluded to earlier, that we are looking at expanding the sorting operation to run 24/7 this year. So we have started that permitting process, and we are expecting to have that finalized by the end of Q4 to allow us to run the quarry at 300,000 tons a year and to pass it through the ore sorter. We have also commissioned, like we had talked about, and we'll continue to ramp up the operation from a 300,000 ton. As the permitting allows us, our intention is to go to a 1 million ton per annum plant, which will significantly see, as you'll see later on with the slides, the concentrate production anticipated. So I guess, sorry, just back up one, Kim. So we are reassessing in this last quarter, we're reassessing the geology. We brought in mining, senior technical geological resource, and also on a mining resource. So we have spent a lot of time in this last quarter looking at the underground, looking at an underground operation, and completing a lot of the component studies in particular to submit the environmental document for both the underground operation in the future and the 1 million ton per annum. So as you see in 2022, we are up to speed on all operations simultaneous, which will be a significant production. Next. And those of you that don't know, I myself have been involved in ore sorting since 2010. I started a company based on ore sorting and continues to this day. The sorters basically work from scalping off the very large oversize. You crush the material, you take off the fines, and then you pass the coarse material that is very low grade through the ore sorters, and you get somewhere between a 10 to 25 times upgrade, depending on the size of the material that we decide to put through the processing plant. But it's been very good recoveries, and it's worked exactly like the test work said it would work. And we know tungsten from doing it in the past, and it's a very, very good sort. So it's as simple as a dry process at 40 millimeter material gets passed into the ore sorter. The waste, if the X-ray does not see a dense piece of tungsten in the rock, it lets it go to waste. And if it sees the dense piece of tungsten, it shoots it over with a jet of air and goes onto another belt for processing further downstream. Now, the beauty of this operation is that the waste from this operation goes directly to the quarry, as it's already crushed down to an aggregate size. So the quarry will take that material and further beneficiate it, turning it into quarry products that we will be very competitive with. Next. So yeah, as we discussed on the XRT plant, we've certainly got we've entered into what we call a METS program with the government in Australia, and we have secured a $200,000 grant. We're also matching that grant with CRONIMET and ourselves, SEI, and all this information will flow into a feasibility study to allow us to finance the next round of debt that's required to take the project forward up to 1 million tons. So as you can see, we have a development program with environmental permitting. We are working currently with the feasibility study. We have several partners. We are bulk testing. We are passing the fines currently through the plant when they're available. And this, by debulking this material, it is a very low cost operation and allowing it to be very economic. Next. This is part of our feasibility work that we're currently doing. This is a 10 centimeter survey of the entire site done by drones. You'll see the stars on the various dumps, that these are our current locations where we're sampling large bulk samples to determine the value and the grade of the material in the dump. Next. So the quarry, as most of you know, has been quite, in this fourth quarter, as alluded to, it's been a great success. It allowed us to upgrade a lot of the old equipment. Some of the equipment was 30 years old that we've been able to change out and to advance and put in state-of-the-art equipment. We have hired a very senior quarry manager that worked with some of the shires, and we're excited to have him get around and secure further contracts. We have discussed the current contract with BAMA. We have discussed with them about the future, and they said that they are very excited about getting 2 other contracts in our area in the upcoming year, that they're very happy with our service, and we're hope to be able to be competitive on that tender contracts in the future. And our growth plan is to really make a value-added product with the sorter rejects and the quarry material, whether that's concrete, rail ties. We're investigating several different items currently. Next. So the future, and certainly another reason to be a long-term holder, in my opinion, of SEI, is the new geological model that we've come up with the king veins. In the past, as you are looking at the where it says high-grade veins at the bottom of the pit, the initial plan for a lot of you long-term shareholders was sub-level block caving, which is a very good plan. But what we determined using the computer modeling, and we believe that there was a narrow vein, high-grade model to either combine with some sub-level block caving in the future, but it allows us to get in underground very quickly and access, as you'll see that line in blue, is a historic decline that we're able to access with certain permits, obviously, access and to start testing some of these high-grade veins that come through the Dike West zone very quickly. So we do have a consultant on retainer currently that is doing all the operating and mining costs, and that, sorry, let's have a little drink. Water. And that has provided and is looking at a comparison study between the different mining methods currently. So this will flow into a feasibility study, and this will we'll try to get underground and do some test mining of these theories and these veins. And so we're really looking forward to getting in underground here and taking a look. Next. So where are we at concentrate wise? Right now in the coming year, 2020, we're making a projection of about 60 tons a month. And to be able to run the one sorter at 300,000 tons a month, we believe this is very achievable from what the numbers that we're seeing now. And this will be quite economic. It should have close to 100% profit margin on this level. Next. This is when the 1 million ton a year ore sorter kicks in. And as you can see, we run up to 1,200 to 1,500. And sorry, these are 50% tungsten, what we call 50% tungsten equivalent. When we produce a concentrate here, we produce a 50% concentrate, and Cronimet buys that from us. Next. So the third one, as you can see, the big jump is in the underground, opening the underground. We are anticipating and we are working on and targeting these numbers. The target is 1,000 ton a day from underground on this system, and the grades from what we're seeing from the intercepts, it still needs more work. And I caution everybody, this is, we still need to tighten down the JORC resource. We still need to put it through feasibility study. But in saying that, it looks very realistic to myself, and this is what targets that I've given the company to achieve and giving our consultants. Next. Yep. Yes, so the gold exploration, I gave a talk just recently, and my background is in gold and in production in gold in particular. We did have large-scale exploration programs, and I must say the two properties of our very high quality that we currently have, and we haven't been able to get to the properties to get boots on the ground, but now that they're open, that'll be a high priority for us to get over there. But these properties, what we're looking for is not the high-grade, narrow style of vein mineralization. What they are is that they are structurally controlled on that Peel fault. And there's several others in that area also looking at this theory, but we have the best ground on the Crow Mountain in that, in my opinion, we have the best ground. And Broken Hill as well, also looking at, we did a lot of calcrete sampling there, coming up with some drill-ready targets as well. On those, we are evaluating to see which way to go with these particular properties, how aggressive, but mostly it'll depend on cash flow coming out of the mine and how much extra cash flow that we would have to work these properties. So that's, but they are very high quality drill ready target properties already. Next. I'm going to turn the presentation back to Oliver and Kim and to discuss the ESG. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, yeah, lovely. Thanks, Kevin, running us through. I'm sure there will be questions coming up later. Kim, we can continue. I just would like to kind of summarize, and whenever I have the opportunity to talk to stakeholders, this slide is sufficient for me to basically summarize the value proposition of Mount Carbine, but also the company. Clearly, as I mentioned in my introduction, we have a focus on critical minerals security. We understand the space of critical minerals. We do have, through the partnership with Cronimet, but also through partnering with other stakeholders in industries globally, we do understand their raw material needs. And we considered our task to basically identify opportunities and assets in Australia and overseas to jointly develop these opportunities. We do like to focus on projects where existing infrastructure and existing operational track records, let's say, can give us a low cost entry and allows us to expand production at a reasonable cost. And clearly seen at the Mount Carbine development that the infrastructure which had been built at site and the proximity to major cities like Cairns is very beneficial. Even during times of pandemic, I would say we did not have any issues on bringing people or equipment into site. Another great advantage here is the fact that we, from an environmental, but also from an economic point of view, is the fact that we are generating a byproduct revenue from the waste material that is being utilized at the quarry. And we do see opportunities, obviously, to make use of the quarry infrastructure, expand this to support infrastructure development in the region, which I think everybody can agree is also a priority of the government now coming out of the COVID pandemic. I don't have to say much on the resource. I believe we have a world-class asset. As Kevin highlighted in the introduction, we are sitting right next to very promising concessions, which are held by other companies, but which clearly indicate that there's a great tungsten mineralization in the region. And we are in touch with, let's say, peers to elaborate on how this potential could be lifted and how potential cooperations could look like. And to highlight, I think Kevin made that very clear, the fact that we had looked at the existing decline and identified west of the dike certain structures and intersects from the existing and known vein system, gives us certainly quite an advantage. And prior to spending major capital on the underground development, we do have a chance to test those sections and trial mine and give a firm feedback on how we best design the mine program. Last but not least, and Kim will go into further detail, I think the entire organization had been extremely committed to the purpose and the approach of creating a company and developing a company with a high priority on environmental, social, and governance issues. Sustainable mining is in the DNA of the company. The people in the executive team, as well as in the board, do have a track record. And I'm personally quite pleased that all of the employees do share this view and participate in bringing the company towards this direction. The next slide, I would like to give you, and there was a question coming in with regards to China, and it's good that we had prepared this slide. I would like to give you a little bit of an information on how do we see the competitive environment and how do we analyze ourselves and set ourselves benchmarks towards the peers of the industry. So there's two main factors that I would like to introduce. One is a factor that we can't really influence, and that's China. On the left side graph, you basically see the cash cost curve of the industry. Each block represents a major producer. Typically on the right side, you have the Chinese state-owned companies producing at relatively high cost. And more on the left side, you also have companies which either produce various minerals in their mine operation, like China molybdenum, where tungsten is a byproduct. And ourselves, we will be also positioned in the first quartile, given the fact that we are generating revenues from selling the waste rock. The brown curve is just representing the pricing over the last 3 years, and you clearly see what is typical, not only for tungsten, but other base metal commodities. Once a major amount of the, significant amount of the producers start losing money, this is obviously where prices will find their floors. And that is what we have clearly seen throughout 2020. As I mentioned before, the costs in China are increasing. There's, in my point of view, a smart system of the Chinese government through their quota restrictions to manage the production levels and the export of tungsten to satisfy primarily their own needs, domestic needs. But the cost driver is clearly the more stringent environmental regulations which are coming up even within China, and that is in the coming years adding definitely additional cost for those producers. So we do believe that the floor price of tungsten of APT is where we are, and is rather increasing than reversing that trend. At the bottom, you see the area that we can directly influence, which is our cost. And I think we mentioned a couple of times during the session that we generate these byproduct credits. That's a fundamental support to our cost competitiveness. And we are expanding on the basis of existing infrastructure, and therefore looking at industry-leading specific capital expenditure versus our peers. And that is what is basically explained at the bottom right. The gray block basically illustrates the average cash cost, production cost of selected non-Chinese producers, so the Western producers. And you see in the footnote basically who those are. There's 2 Spanish producers. We have 2 Australian developers other than ourselves. We have a Vietnamese producer, and we do have a globally operating group where we took information down. We've set ourselves benchmark, and you see that is around the $115 mark where the today's producers are sitting. And the shadowed line is basically representing the average production cost of historical producers, which had been in the market for a long time. So definitely the Western producers are improving their cost position. And that is for us something that we need to track. And as I said, we can influence our own cost and drive those down. The middle section represents the byproduct credits. So we are effectively starting at minus $30, given the fact that we sell the rock as quarry products, the waste rock. And so the operational costing will be reported starting 2021. It would not have made a lot of sense to release a lot of information during a ramp-up period. And I guess after the first quarter next year, the market will get detailed information on our positioning versus the peers. And the right one is also to be tracked in future when the company is going to announce investment plans. Specific CapEx basically says for every unit MTU, which is, as you know, is 10 kilograms of WO3 tungsten. For every MTU, there's a specific investment cost that the developers and today's producers are spending on their projects. And you see it's between $150 per MTU installed capacity up to $300 per MTU installed capacity. So that is also something, these are probably the two KPIs that you should track, that we are tracking, and we thought it's good to illustrate it here. Kim, back to you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Oliver and Kevin. I hope you have all enjoyed a virtual site tour of our operations at Mount Carbine. Thanks for that, Kevin, and for describing in detail our 4 pillars of development and projects at Mount Carbine, running through the retreatment JV, the quarry operations, our geology exploration, and our underground plans. And thank you, Oliver, for a macro view of what's going on in the tungsten market, in particular in relation to China, and you've answered one of our questions that has come through already from our shareholders, and also to sum up our value proposition. So as you can see, we have a strategic roadmap to 2025. We are well underway with our plans in 2020 and tracking quite nicely towards our ambitions in 2022. Our roadmap has been aligned with our purpose that Oliver has talked about in detail. New economy minerals and critical minerals are those that are in high demand, as Oliver said, as the world transitions and navigates the global shifts in industry, energy and sustainability. We do want to make sure that we are on track to meet our ambition in 2025 to be a top 3 tungsten producer outside of China by output. And we want to do it in a way that maintains a robust capital structure. It means that we are funding our development through revenue and cash flow where we can, and then with debt as and when it makes sense. So to help us get there, we are relying on our people, and together with the workshop that we as a leadership team and board have undertaken, we formulated our purpose, and we also articulated the values that are meaningful to us, which align with our purpose and which align with us individually. These are the 6 non-negotiables that you see on the page, and I'm pleased to say in all my interactions with people on site and in our corporate services and in Zoom or meetings, as Oliver mentioned, we do a lot of our work on Zoom and across the world. All our people exemplify these values. In terms of our board and leadership team, I think amongst the 5 of us, we span 4 nationalities, and our skill sets range from things such as metallurgy, business, engineering, law, resources development and governance. So we think we are well placed as a leadership team to take this company forward. And then obviously the last 12 months has been a lot of hard work by our people. And thank you, Oliver, for thanking our people right up front, because you really have dug deep And you've done it in a way that's been collaborative and in the spirit of learning and sharing. So we're very grateful for the people that we have, and we'll hope to maintain that culture as we continue to grow. And then finally, our purpose is meaningless unless we have a positioning statement. So the purpose talks about why we exist as a company and what we want to achieve as our contribution to making a positive societal impact, in particular to address geological and environmental and societal challenges to meet increasing global demand for metals. We are doing it through positioning ourselves to be resource efficient, value-oriented, and focusing on minerals that are critical for tomorrow. And finally, I just want to highlight that we not only, this is not about purpose washing, this is setting up a sound corporate foundation. We are walking the talk, and already in this early nascent stage of our development, we're getting recognition for what we're doing. The mine waste transformation project that Kevin has talked about in detail and walked you through is we are resourcing, we are extracting from secondary sources. It's from a mixture of tailings and all sort of reject and waste rock dump stockpiles. We are leveraging technology, which is the X-ray sorter that's on site, to make this process economic for us and ultimately sustainable as a business. And then as part of all that, we're ensuring that the volume that goes to our processing plant is minimised or is reduced. And then this means that we are realising efficiencies in terms of energy consumption, water usage, and fuel consumption. So in that respect, we have been shortlisted by AMEC, an industry group that we joined this year, and we are getting really great support from AMEC. And we're shortlisted for the Environmental Award. We're very chuffed to be in the same category as the likes of IGO. And so we're looking forward to the announcement of that award on the 10th of December. So watch this space. And then finally, I've talked about our collaboration and the importance we place on this internally amongst our employee groups and also externally with our stakeholders. We feel that we create more together than on our own in many respects, and we certainly embrace collaboration in order to realise shared value. And right at the bottom there, you'll see that the European Raw Materials Alliance is an organisation that's been set up and funded by the European Commission. The kick-off meeting was this week, and we've been very lucky and fortunate that through our connection with Chronomet, we've been invited to join that organisation so that we can leverage the support that organisations such as this can give us moving forward. And I think that's it. So on that note, I'll hand back over to our chair to conclude the formal part of the AGM. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Kim. Thanks, Kevin. Now the fun part is over. It's getting serious. But prior to that, just to ask Suzanne whether there's any questions up front, maybe with regards to the voting, or we just proceed. I suggest, and any question that you might have, again, recorded on the Q&A function in the bottom of the screen, and we will address that at the end of the formal business of the AGM. I do hope again that everybody get through the system and made their votes. Otherwise, we do allow for questions after we had basically gone through the resolutions and read them out. So you will have a chance to vote during the clarification and the explanations. Okay, I will now turn to the formal part of the meeting. The items of business for this meeting and the resolutions to be considered by shareholders are contained in the notice of meeting that was distributed to all members by mail or email on Monday, 26 October 2020, and is to be taken as read. Voting on all resolutions will be conducted by poll. I now declare voting open, and all items of business are considered. For the purposes of the poll, I appoint Teresa Leantonas of Atomic Group, the company's share registry, to act as returning officer and to conduct the poll. Voting is now open and will remain open until the poll is declared closed. Your votes must be submitted prior to the poll being closed for them to be counted. We will now progress. Proxies have been inspected and all those validly lodged have been accepted. Proxies accepted represent 211,974,366 shares, or 19% equivalent of the issued capital of the company. All undirected proxies or open votes that have nominated the chair of the meeting as their proxy will be cast in favor of each resolution in the notice of meeting. We will now proceed to the resolutions set out in the notice of meeting. For the first item of business, we table the company's annual financial report for the year ended 30 June 2020. The financial report and the reports of the directors and the auditors are now laid before the meeting. There will be no vote on this item, obviously, and it is a discussion item only. I now invite comments or questions on the reports or the business of the company as contained within the annual report. I would ask that question on any of the other items of the business be deferred until we come to that particular item and specific resolution. So please drop any question that you have in the Q&A box. The company's auditor for the year 2020, Jeff Parker of Nexia Australia, is online to take questions relevant to conduct the conduct of the audit and the preparation and content of the independent auditor's report. So Suzanne, are there any questions? I did saw one popping up, but I might hand over to you to read them out if they are specific on the annual report, and Jeff would be able to answer.
Yes, Oliver, we've received a question on the annual report. The annual report states that the company is continuing to evaluate corporate and exploration opportunities within the new economy and critical minerals sector to create shareholder value. Shareholder asks, are there any focus areas or types of projects that the company is most actively pursuing?
Is that a specific question that we have to ask Jeff to respond to?
No, it's a question that the chair or your delegate can respond to, Oliver. It's not a question for our auditor.
Okay, yeah, okay, I just read it out myself. I'm happy to take that up and invite Kim and Kevin to respond to. Certainly, again, how this project had been reactivated, as you all know, just 2 years ago, was due to the partnership arrangement and agreements that had been set in place between Specialty Metals and Cronimet Group. And there was a specific interest from Cronimet Group to get access to supply of tungsten specifically. So it had been a commodity specific approach. Our partner Cronimet, and as I mentioned before, we are in touch obviously with industry stakeholders. I would say we are operating within the space of critical minerals. You're operating in a niche market where I believe everybody knows everybody. And there's a friendly, I would say, alignment and cooperation specifically between the non-Chinese producers, and there's exchange of knowledge. And so I think we want to leverage on that basis, as I showed as well. Kevin had it on his slides, and I showed it in the summary, that we do believe there's a great resource potential within the region around Mount Carbine. The fact that we have great infrastructure available. We have the Highway 81 just crossing our concession, going over to the neighbor's concession, which is owned by an Australian company, Tungsten Mining, unlisted, and they own the Watershed project, which was a historical operating mine as well. So I do believe there is potential to leverage the company's existing competences and further expand in the field of tungsten specifically as a critical mineral. But there are other minerals that are considered critical, and where we do believe with our know-how of being able to establish operating sites and specifically those where advanced technologies can be applied, such as the sensor-based sorting operations. Those are the ones that we want to look out. Those are the projects that we are interested in, and we are in discussions with industry peers. And as Kim has highlighted, and I think that is a great achievement, the recognition in the industry, and being contacted from mine developers, asking whether we can have a look at their projects and share some of our knowledge. So I guess that should cover the part of whether we are actively doing something. Yes, we are. Without we can name any specific commodity now other than tungsten, but we do understand the value chains of critical minerals quite well, and we do want to extend the portfolio on that basis. Okay, but maybe before we go, and these are probably more general questions to the company strategy. Is there any comment or question on the annual report, Suzanne?
Sorry, no, Oliver, there's no more questions in regards to the annual report, the financial reports, and there have been no questions received for the auditors to address.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, then let us proceed, and I appreciate the question. And we do look forward to further exchange later in the days to come, or anytime you wish to address any question or comment to us, the leadership team or the board. So we move on to the resolution 1. Under the Corporations Act 2001, listed companies are required to include as part of their directors' report a remuneration report, which includes specified information. The directors have prepared a remuneration report to 30th June 2020, and it is included in the annual report on pages 25 to 30. It has been made available to shareholders. The Act also requires companies to put shareholders a non-binding vote to enable shareholders to voice their opinion on matters included in the report. If you have any question regarding this resolution, please submit it now in the Q&A section. And as you see the pre-received proxy votes, you see the numbers in the bottom. And any voting conducted now will be collected by Atomic and released to the market as soon as practically possible.
Oliver, we've received no questions in regard to the remuneration report.
Okay, fantastic. I had received the notice that when you are, I personally haven't used the online system, but when you are voting online, you will probably see all the resolution on one screen, and in the bottom you will see a next button. So please make sure that you vote for all resolutions first before you press the next button. Otherwise, you might have difficulties on returning to that page. So bear that in mind. All right. So we might continue with resolution number 2. As this relates to myself, I hand the chair to my dear friend and colleague, Stephen, to chair the meeting for this resolution.
Good afternoon, everyone. As stated in the notice of meeting, 1/3 of directors must retire at the AGM and are eligible for re-election. Oliver has offered, and the directors have agreed, that he will retire and stand for re-election at this AGM. Directors' details, including Oliver's, are set out in the directors' report on page 23 of the annual report, so I will not repeat those details here today. If you wish to discuss this resolution, please submit your questions via the Zoom Q&A. Suzanne, are there any questions?
No, we've received no questions in regards to Oliver's re-election.
Thank you, Suzanne. The proxies received in relation to this resolution are on the screen. I will now put the motion. I have pleasure in moving as an ordinary resolution that Mr. Oliver Kleinhempel, who retires by rotation as a director of Specialty Metals International Limited, in accordance with Rule 17.5 of the Constitution, and, being eligible and offering himself for re-election, be re-elected as a director of the company. I would like to invite shareholders who have not yet cast their vote by proxy to now vote via the online portal. However, are reminded not to click on Next until you have selected your vote for all resolutions. I now hand the chair back to Oliver. Thank you.
All right, yeah. Thanks, Stephen, running us through resolution 2. Continuing resolution number 3, as stated in the notice of meeting, Kim was appointed by the Board of Directors on 1st of October 2020 as an addition to the board under Rule 17.7 of the Constitution. Kim holds office until this AGM, at which time she is required to stand for re-election as a director. Kim's director's resume is set out in the notice of the meeting, and I will not repeat those details here today. If you wish to discuss this resolution, please submit your questions now, and we will address them. I'll give you a bit of time. I can't see there was one question coming in. I'm not sure whether on that subject. Suzanne, could you read out the question?
We've received no questions in regard to the appointment of Kim as director.
All right. Okay. The proxies received in relation to this resolution are on the screen, readable. I will now put the motion. I have the pleasure to moving as an extraordinary resolution that Mrs. Kim Cavallaro, who was appointed a director by the board on 1st October 2020, is confirmed as being appointed as a director of Specialty Metals International Limited in accordance with Rule 17.7 of the Constitution. So I would like to invite shareholders who have not yet voted to cast their votes now via the portal. And as mentioned before, try to avoid to click next before we have run through the remaining resolutions. I think we can proceed then to resolution 4A and 4B. The purpose of these next two resolutions is to seek shareholders' approval and ratification of the issue of shares such that the issues do not form part of the 15% of issued capital that the company is restricted to issue in the 12-month period without prior shareholder approval. The notice of meeting and an explanatory statement set out in the detail the relevant information regarding the shares issue, and it has set out all the information that is required for you to vote on that subject. I would now like to allow some time for comments and questions. If you have any questions, please submit them now. I do not see any coming in. Suzanne, would you confirm?
We received no questions in regard to these two resolutions, Oliver.
All right, yeah, thanks, Suzanne. I will then first move to resolution 4A as an ordinary resolution for which the proxies received in relation to this resolution. The details are on the screen and the proxies mentioned in the bottom. I will put now the motion that for the purpose of ASX listing rule 7.4 and for all other purposes, shareholders approve and ratify the prior issue of 2.5 million shares as consideration for consulting fees pursuant to the Mount Carbine acquisition on 27 December 2019 under ASX listing rule 7.1. Shareholders can vote via the online tool, and we'll give you a few seconds for that. Okay, I would suggest maybe moving on to resolution 4B as an ordinary resolution for which the proxies received in relation to this resolution are shown on the screen. I will now put the motion that for the purpose of ASX listing rule 7.4 and for all other purposes, shareholders approve and ratify the prior issue of 125 million shares to sophisticated and professional investors on 6 March 2020 under ASX Listing Rule 7.1. Here as well, I would like to invite all the shareholders who have not yet cast their vote to do that now via the online system. I do not see any question further on that subject, so we might continue on resolution number 5, approval of equity incentive planning. As stated in the notice of meeting, the purpose of this resolution is to seek approval to extend the equity incentive plan for the next 3 years from 26 November 2020, thereby giving the company the flexibility to make future issues of securities for eligible persons to 26 November 2023, up to a maximum of 10% of the current issued capital of the company. If you wish to discuss this resolution or have any comment or question, please drop the question now.
Oliver, we have not received any questions in relation to this resolution.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Suzanne. So let's now move on to resolution as a 5 as an ordinary resolution for which the proxies received in relation to these resolutions are shown on the screen. I will now put the motion that for the purposes of ASX Listing Rule 7.2, exception 13, and for all other purposes, the company authorizes the directors to issue equity securities in the company for the 3 years commencing 26 November 2020, upon and subject to the terms of the equity incentive plan, which are summarized in the explanatory statement accompanying this notice. So I would like to invite all those shareholders which have not yet cast their vote to do that now. And we will proceed slowly but surely. Resolution number 6, approval of 10% placement facility. As stated in the notice of meeting, the purpose of this resolution is to seek approval to enable the company to issue equity securities up to a further 10% of its issued share capital through placements over a 12-month period after the AGM. This is in addition to its 15% placement capacity under ASX Listing Rule 7.1. If you wish to discuss this resolution, please submit your questions now.
Oliver, we have received no questions in relation to this resolution.
All right, okay, thanks, Suzanne. So I will now move to resolution 6 as a special resolution for which the proxies received in relation to this resolution are shown on the screen in the book. So I will now put the motion that pursuant to and in accordance with ASX Listing Rule 7.1A and for all other purposes, shareholders approve the issue of equity securities up to 10% of the issued capital of Specialty Metals International Limited at the time of issue, calculated in accordance with the formula prescribed in Listing Rule 7.1A2 and on the terms and conditions referred to in the explanatory statement accompanying this notice. All right. Resolution number 8, amendment of the Constitution. As stated in the notice of meeting, the purpose of this resolution is to seek approval to amend the company's constitution and accommodate the amendments to ASX Listing Rule 15.12, which came into effect on 1st December 2019 in relation to changes in the escrow regime. The proposed amendment aligns the company's constitution with a 2-tier escrow regime the ASX has introduced. If there are any questions or comments to this resolution, please submit them now.
Oliver, we've received no questions in relation to this resolution.
Okay, yep, thanks, Suzanne. So let us now move to resolution 7 as a special resolution for which the proxies received in this relation to this resolution are on the screen shown in the bottom. I will now put the motion that for the purposes of section 136(2) of the Corporations Act, the Constitution of Specialty Metals International Limited be modified by making the amendments contained within the explanatory statement accompanying this notice. Great. And last but not least, resolution number 8, change of company name. It is proposed that shareholders approve the company's name being changed from Specialty Metals International Limited to EQ Resources Limited. The board considers that the change of the name is more appropriate, supporting the identity and direction of the company as introduced during today's meeting and as articulated in our recently published purpose statement and as published in the annual report. If this name change takes effect, the board will also request that ASX change the company's ASX listing code from SEI to EQR. If you have any question or comment to this resolution, please drop it now.
Oliver, we have received a question on this resolution.
Lovely.
The question we received is, why change the name again? And if it is changed, what is the origin of EQ Minerals?
Okay. Let me ask Kim to give a bit of input there. She had been moderating that exercise, and while we had been, I think, getting great support by the teams, and Kim will give you a bit of background, I would suggest.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Yeah, so it's EQ Resources, and as Oliver said, we think it actually reflects the identity and direction of the company going forward, because EQ is generally synonymous with emotional intelligence. And for us, this is an important characteristic of the company going forward, because as I've mentioned, we are very much focused on our people and on the value of collaboration. In addition, we think that EQ, the E portion of the name, actually signals our focus on the economics, on environment, and also on efficiency. So for all these reasons, we believe that EQ Resources represents the company better going forward. And then in actual fact, the other thing, and we've had this discussion with our external stakeholders, including from AMEC, who complained about the spelling of specialty metals, and so in terms of specialty. So we get that wrong all the time, and so it's time for a name change, and we're very much, as a leadership team and a board, really supportive of the name change. So thank you for the opportunity to answer the question.
Oliver, we have no further questions on this resolution.
All right, yeah. Thanks, Kim, for taking this up. So let me now move resolution 8 as a special resolution, for which the proxies received in relation to this resolution are shown on the screen. I will now put the motion that with the effect from the date that ASIC alters the details of the company's registration in accordance with section 157 of the Corporations Act, the name of the company be changed to EQ Resources Limited. So as this is the last resolution you're invited to vote on, we might give you another few seconds to complete your voting and progress through the online system. If there are no further questions, Suzanne, on the resolution section.
No, there's no further questions, Oliver.
All right, yep, thanks, Suzanne. So given there are no further questions, let me declare the poll closed. The staff of Atomic will now process the polls, and the results will be announced to the ASX once they are available. I will now end the formal part of today's meeting. I declare the meeting as closed. As advised earlier, the results of the poll will be announced as soon as practically possible on our webpage, as well as through a release. And I do appreciate the attendance from everybody until now, and I guess we now have a time for more Q&As moderated by Suzanne. Thank you.
Oliver, we have received a general question. The question is regarding the importance of people to the overall success of speciality. Do we foresee any recruitment and or training issues over the next 5 years, especially in the specialist or technical disciplines?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I would like to hand it over to the operational team, to the leadership team, Kim and Kevin, where certainly there was already engagement with our people. And yeah, Kim, maybe you would like to take this one up.
I think Kevin was ready online, but as I've said, we have positioned ourselves so that we are people focused. And one of the reasons we've done this is because of the competition for talent going forward, and particularly in the Australian market. So we want to make sure that we are positioned in a way that's friendly for our workforce and with a really good culture going forward. And that's why we've taken the time to emphasise our values and set up a good corporate foundation. In terms of recruiting technical staff, so far we've not experienced, we've been very fortunate in recruiting staff that we want and who have exhibited the characteristics that are important to us. Kevin, do you want to add any more to this at this stage?
Yeah, just a quick one. I guess the big development is going to be the underground, which will probably staff up to somewhere around 70 people in the future if we do it ourselves, which we are kind of heading that direction. So we will be looking a lot for the underground staffing. We basically will be training for the sensor-based sorting. Our skills on site are lend itself to training individuals in that technology ourselves. And but certainly the underground, it will be our biggest challenge, is getting people to run the underground. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin and Kim. Oliver, we have another question, operational question. What would the mine life of the waste stockpile be at proposed development rates? Yeah,
I let Kevin comment on it if he hasn't covered it during the presentation. Kevin?
Yep. Yeah, so we are looking at about a 10-year life of mine for the waste stockpile. It probably might carry into as many as 12 years, depending. And then there's the old sorter reject, optical sorter reject pile that we have tested. So that could add additional years, or we will expand our operating permit to more than 1 million sometime in the future. But yeah, it's 10 to 12 years, basically.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah.
Suzanne, we have received a further query in regards to whether the company is expecting any further capital raisings to take place.
Yeah, I would maybe Kim can comment, and the colleagues from the board obviously feel free to add. But Kim, I guess it's one you can take up.
Yeah, sure. There are currently no plans to complete a capital raising. We are, as I said, we've been funding our development out of cash flow. And to the extent that any time this changes in the future, we will certainly be making an announcement and releasing details on the ASX. Of course, we are in discussions with parties about funding opportunities and initiatives, but there's nothing to announce at this stage. So thank you for the question.
Thanks, Kim. We have another question as to a query in regards to what separate revenue streams will be provided for in future financial reporting. Kim, you might also respond to that question.
Yep, thank you for that. As each business unit becomes significant by way of revenues, and I think Oliver indicated that we will be reporting revenue streams, different revenue streams in 2021. By way of revenues, profits or assets, segment reporting will be introduced to reflect the financial results and position of each operating unit of the company. This kind of reporting is in line with relevant accounting standards.
Thank you. Oliver, I think we only have one further question, which may have already been answered. Tungsten is designated as a critical metal. How is Specialty Metals leveraging its position as one of the only producers in Australia?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, I hope we have covered a bit of it. I think again we are at the forefront. If you see that there's great peers, great companies developing tungsten projects in Australia and elsewhere. And as I mentioned before, I think it's our great interest to be in touch with those companies. There's a common interest. Kim has mentioned the European Raw Materials Alliance, where we are an active member, and I believe have great people on the other side of the ocean that tells us that yeah, it's critical to get production up. So it's not only us who wants to expand, but there are also other peers and partners and companies who want to set a foot on the ground. So we do have an interest on cooperating with them for joint success. We do believe that we have outstanding people. We have a good set of skills. We have a track record now with this project. So definitely I can confirm that other companies are observing what we are doing. And but that should not only apply for tungsten down the road, that there are other commodities as well on focus. But that is definitely a great start. And yeah, we look forward to engaging with customers and off-takers. As I said, it's a small industry. And yeah, great ground to start the further developments next year.
Thank you, Oliver. I think I'd just also add that we're in contact with government bodies that have been set up specifically to support the alternative sourcing of critical minerals. And one of them is the Critical Minerals Facilitation Office that was only set up in Australia in January this year. So we have had meetings with the head of the Critical Minerals Facilitation Office. They are very interested in what we are doing, and we are keeping engaged as we continue to develop our plans and formulate studies so that we can move forward with further discussions. In addition, we have connections to the Australia-India Business Council, and Australia and India have this year signed a MOU in relation to critical minerals. So again, we're keeping a very close eye on connections and developments there. And then finally, we've already mentioned the newly formed body, the European Raw Materials Alliance. So all of these developments we're keeping a very close eye on, and just in dialogue with all the parties concerned. So very good time to be in the critical mineral space.
Thank you.
Okay, Suzanne, I do
Oliver,
see
we have
questions
another
flowing
question.
in. Yep.
The question is, when do you envision first tungsten export earnings?
Yeah, I could leave that to Kim or Kevin to report. Kevin is at site. I hope he is shoveling a product into big bags as we speak or after the meeting. But no, maybe to seriously answer that question, I think we had reported in the previous quarterly report that, yeah, I would say significant shipments or industrial size shipments, I put it that way, had been done to customers in Asia, in Europe and the US. And that is beyond sending samples of our product. People should understand that the tungsten concentrate, given their applications, is a very technical product, I can say. And different consumers in the world, let's say, have customized their processes downstream to suit various concentrate types that are basically traded in the market. So bottom line is it took ourselves, I think, considerable amount of time to engage with customers, to sit down, to go through the material that we had produced, to send, starting from a few kilograms up to 1-2 tons of product overseas during the COVID heights. I would say the main impact that we have seen at site is definitely the logistical side and the support. customers, to get to our customers and get the tests done. But as mentioned before, we do have very satisfied customers in Asia, in Europe, and the US. And these days, we have received further feedback from these production campaigns from our customers. And you will see in every quarterly report a statement of where we have exported our product and how much product, and what kind of relationship we are building with our customers. So I guess there's more to come. Yeah.
Thank you, Oliver. The next question is there a sense of ongoing demand for tungsten moving forward? Has COVID-19 impacted this?
Happy to take that up just from a market perspective, and that's why we have inserted the slide to describe the industry environment. Again, considering that 80-85% of tungsten is produced within China and most of it is consumed within China, there's a limited amount of global trade for the Western world, for in industrial ecosystem in Europe or the US, Japan, Korea restarting their own tungsten production, as they have classified tungsten as one of the 5 critical minerals to keep pushing forward with their digitalization industries, the car manufacturing, etc., etc. So you see countries are looking at getting less dependent on imports and less dependent, obviously, on China being willing to export some of their production. Important to note that Australia is holding 14% of the known tungsten resources in the world. It ranks second. So it's definitely a great turf to be when looking for new tungsten projects, getting them online with regards to the demand cycle. I think there's no secret to say that any commodity had been rather low in demand. Now we are moving towards the end of the year. Companies are trying to keep the inventories down. So I think there's a seasonal effect of a rather slow season. Nevertheless, all our tungsten that we produce every day is being committed already to customers. You will see that we have a fairly early Chinese New Year, end of January, beginning February. That is also rather a slow season. But we are very bullish on tungsten as a commodity. We all know it has irreplaceable functionalities in its applications. There is, let's say, the mining sector itself is a big consumer. Oil and gas drilling is probably slowing down a little bit, but overall the outlook is great. And just to re-emphasize that the European Commission, and they should know the best what their industrial ecosystem is in need of. They have just reclassified tungsten as the metal with the highest economic importance. So we are not concerned. We as an industrial ecosystem actually have to make sure that we get our projects up and running, because the fear that you have, if there's no availability of a specific raw material, companies will try to invent alternatives. So I guess we are better off working on expanding total production. And therefore, as mentioned before by Kim, and I have emphasized, we need to collaborate within the industry and make sure that we can serve the market. And without doubt, it's a growing market.
Thank you, Oliver. We have one remaining comment from our Zoom participants. This is addressed to the entire panel. Could I take this opportunity to thank the board for a very informative and positive AGM and the people working to further SEI's goals?
Yeah, let me respond to Andy White, who's a fantastic person and geologist. And I hope, Andy, you're doing well. And a lot of this is thanks to your hard work in the past.
Oliver, we have received no further questions for the AGM on general matters.
All right, yeah. Well, thanks a lot. I'm very happy to get a note from Andy, and yeah, I guess we believe we are on the right track. Again, I can just request everybody to stay tuned keep supporting the team. When you are around in Far North Queensland, obviously take the opportunity to reach out to the colleagues at site, and we're happy to keep you all updated. So not sure whether there's any further comment from my fellow colleagues, directors, the leadership team. If not, yeah, I would like to thank you once more for attending this virtual AGM. Very much enjoyed it and hope we were informative. And thanks for your attention, and we will now close the AGM. Thanks a lot.